Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Irving Arts Center's Lunch and Learn. My name is Marcy Inman, Director of Exhibitions and Educational Programs at Irving Arts Center. Our guest speaker for today's program is artist and art educator Jon Fontenot, whose work is featured in the solo exhibition Pathways and Influences, Paintings by Jon Fontenot, currently in the Arts Center's Dupree Lobby Gallery and up through June 1st. We are recording today's presentation, and Jon's talk will be available to view on the Irving Arts Center's YouTube channel in the next 2 to 3 weeks. As always, there is time allotted for Q&A after his talk. Please raise your hand to speak, and a microphone will be passed to you. The microphone is necessary so we can capture the audio for all your comments and questions for the recording. Jon was born in New Orleans in 1975 and has since lived in a variety of places from Richmond, Virginia, to Los Angeles, California, to Alta, Utah. He currently lives in Dallas and teaches at Irving High School in Irving, Texas, where he has been an instructor in the visual arts since 2001. His work has been exhibited at the Ant Colony Gallery, Mitchell Lofts Gallery, 500X Gallery, and the Blue Room Studios in Dallas, the Art Depot in Lubbock, and the 414 Gallery and Carilion Gallery of Tarrant County Community College South in Fort Worth. He received his training at Otis College of Art and Design and the University of North Texas, where he received his BFA in Drawing and Painting and his BA in Visual Art Studies. His current exhibition at the Irving Arts Center, Pathways and Influences, features his latest work that focuses on landscapes and fields of color. Working from photographs he's taken to capture a specific color, texture, or mood, Fontenot accepts the challenge of capturing and transforming an experience. Along with imagery drawn from the natural world as well as architectural elements, his compositions often feature an esoteric element of painted patterns of numbers that, in the artist's words, are meant to bring about an understanding of spirituality, connectivity, and our hierarchical relationship to each other and the forces within creation, end quote. With a desire to pull himself as well as the viewer into the work amidst the saturation of color and texture, Fontenot invites the viewer to immerse themselves and to contemplate the pathways of life and decisions. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome for Jon Fontenot.
Hi, how are y'all doing? As Marcy said, my name is Jon Fontenot, and I'm going to be talking about my work, I guess. So the work that you're seeing today in the gallery, the Dupree Gallery, is very different for me. This has been kind of like a 4-year turnaround from what I usually do. I forgot to set my timer. As you guys know, as she said, I teach at Irving High School. I've taught AP Design and AP Drawing for 23 years now. And like my students are about to do on Friday, I submitted an AP portfolio in 1994 based on a concentration or theme. And I stuck with that theme throughout most of college. It kind of changed, altered, transformed, but the core of it was pretty much the same, which was ideas of childhood and understanding them as we age. Does this want to work? Oh, there we go. So as I progressed in college, I started to move beyond just pop culture references, images that I was familiar with through books, textbooks, and got more familiar with contemporary art. This is one of my older pieces. This is Marlboro. This was at the Kettle Arts Gallery in Deep Ellum for a time period. And I was very much interested in patterns. Very much interested in iconic imagery, But more importantly, I was looking at what I thought was the right people, like David Solly. David Solly is a postmodernist artist, very conceptual, kind of stream of consciousness type artist, and I was very much influenced by him. And what I realized is that's the dumbest thing I could have done, has been influenced by someone so contemporary. But, being young and dumb, I was like, I don't need to learn the masters. Why do we even bother with the masters? The masters, well, I mean, obviously we move past them, right? We don't need them. And I continued to evolve. Oh, that's the wrong button. I continue to evolve into more iconic images, looking again at even more contemporary work, such as Rita Ackerman's work, and bringing that kind of dystopian ideas of adulthood into my imagery. I was really enjoying that, but the problem is if you work for, I must have worked for probably 10 years on the same theme, you get dull. It gets dull. Jackson Pollock eventually became boring. Mondrian eventually became predictable. He had to start really, literally jazzing it up, and some of his later compositions. And then I was talking to a girl I went to high school with, who was showing with me at the 500X, who is now an artist in her own right, Robin O'Neill. She's at the DMA and Fort Worth Modern. She's an amazing artist. And we were talking, and she was expressing some of the things her professors were telling her in her master's thesis, which is, as she was working towards it, they were like, well, you need to go back further. You need to go back even further. And I was thinking, why? And I found myself one day, I was at the Kimball, and I was looking at a watercolor by J.M.W. Turner, John Mallard William Turner. And, he's got these beautiful, larger than life, nautical oil paintings. And everyone's, oh. And then they get to the watercolor and they're like this, to the next work. And I got yelled at probably 20 times by security, because I just could not get close enough to his brushwork. And later, I was watching I think it was an Art 21, some kind of video on Jenny Saville, who is an amazing figurative artist. And she was talking about her influence of Rembrandt and Rembrandt's use of intaglio. And her work is nothing like Rembrandt's. And she explained how and I was like, oh my God, it just smacked me. It hit me why we look at the masters and why we need to constantly going back to them. Because when we look at a lot of, especially my students, they love to look at contemporary art, and their response is, oh, I could do that. And if you're drunk in Jackson Pollock, you can. But they built their way up to it, and we fail to see that when we look at their work. What did I do? Okay. So I started to play around. I was looking at Wayne White's and his work, and I just love his work. So I was trying to find a new voice. So as a teacher, you start doing lots and lots and lots of student examples that you work on for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, and you get maybe 5, 10, 15, 20-minute intervals with them. And then at the end of the day, you're like, I'm going to put it up there. That's how you do it. Have fun with it. And in 2 weeks, you throw it in the trash. And I was getting frustrated. I was in a funk. I was just stuck, literally. I had worked on one voice for so long, and I'd lost it. So I went back to the masters, and I just started going, okay, let me show these students what a finished work looks like, the way I want them to do it. And let me throw a little humor in it. And so this is the most appropriate one that I'm going to show you of that little series. And it's Look Fool. I was very much inspired. I think I just taught LHOOQ by Marcel Duchamp to my students, which is his famous image of a painting of the Mona Lisa that he drew a mustache and a goatee on. And it's wordplay. I'm not going to repeat what he said here, but it's all good. And I started to go, okay. What gives? And then, so I said, okay, let me run with that. Let me get back to basics. Let me get back to technique. Let me get back to why I picked up a pencil and brush in the first place, to get those cool lines. I got into art I just moved to Richmond, Virginia. I was in 5th grade, and I met a kid named Johnny. For 5th grade, I thought he was an amazing illustrator. He drew comic books like no one else. He could draw a Batman he was great. And I thought his line work and his proportion and his action shots were fantastic. I look at him now and I realize they're just copies, but whatever, that's how we all start. And I wanted to get back to that love of line. And so I started working on better quality paper. That paper that you pick up and it's like butter. It's so butter. And it's so nice that you don't even want to touch it. And then you're just going to take that pure white surface and mess it up. And if you're going to mess it up with something pretty. And so that was I just was like, okay, I'm going to allow myself to do this. I'm going to just break down everything I learned in college, everything they told me to do, and I'm going to rebel against what I was rebelling against to begin with. I didn't want to do the masters, let me go back to them. So I did this painting, just basic watercolor, a medium I hated. Couldn't stand it. I thought it was nothing but it was an illustrative medium. I didn't want to touch it. And I was just like, ugh. And it just hit me. I started to love it. And I started to take photographs. This is something I've always done. I love photographing work. Just photographing anything and everything that just catches my eye. And I realized I'm a cyclist. I'm an avid cyclist. I live in Oak Cliff and I cycle pretty much every day from Oak Cliff to Irving High School and back. And they have this beautiful new Trinity Skyline Trail paved access from Sylvan all the way to the Campion Trail and the baseball fields down there and the river bottoms. Beautiful, lovely. It gets foggy every morning almost. It's perfect for capturing photographs. And I like to, during the summers and during the winters, I like doing bikes. I go bike camping and I'll be out in the middle of West Texas. I'll be in the middle of East Texas, South Texas, and just surrounded by beauty. So I just pop a camera out and start photographing. And I realized I had a bunch of photographs I've been thinking about doing something with and I had no clue. So I just started to paint. And I started to work not only in watercolor, but in another medium I really hate, or at the time hated, which was chalk pastel. And why did I do this? It's because I teach my kids this. And I started doing this image here as a student example of Lake Lucerne, just out of Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And I was looking at this image and saying, okay, well, that's fine. And I started to go with it. I started to make it like I saw it in my head. And I was looking back at Gerhard Richter's work of Ferrari, which you guys have seen at the DMA, and how he was able to capture that nuance of photography, that distortion of old film. And I was like, I want to do that. And so I started to build up a voice again. I started to allow some distortions to come through. The way the light hits the camera and just kind of messes with it. that hazy kind of messed up quality that you're like, oh, that's not a keeper. I started to keep those photographs, the ones that were bad, and started to see what I could do with it. First, just to see if I still could draw. I had been working with repetitive kind of pattern wallpaper style imagery for so long. I was like, can I even still do this? And I started to play around with it, pushed it. And I started and stopped and started and stopped. I started this work 5 years before I finished it, and it's only this big. I just couldn't finish it. It sucks. I hated it. I didn't like it. There was something going on. I was stuck. And then same with this work. I started the painting. I had an idea for it. This was some old, heavy bond, 300-pound press watercolor paper that had yellowed. It was so old that one of my coworkers gave me. And I don't know if you guys remember, if you guys are familiar with the art stores in Denton, but it was H&M Art or H&S, whatever. It was right next to the art building. And I don't know where they had this paper in, but a friend of mine worked, knew the owner, got all this free stuff, gave it to me. And it was just corroded. I mean, just soaked in oils or something. I don't know. I could not keep a straight line on this paper. I would do a wash and I would start to get this thing and this thing. And I put it up on the wall and forgot about it for about 4 years. Because in my head, I was still trying to do something more photographic. And I apologize for the graininess of this image. Is this out there?
Yes.
Okay. You'll see it in real person. This is from my website and I couldn't find the actual photograph of it. So there you go. It's enlarged. So I apologize. But I just put it up and I forgot about it. And then I started to continue to do this kind of landscape. I was all like, okay, well, I'm gonna start distorting it. I really like this idea of moving into abstraction again, like Mondrian did when he first started painting in abstraction. His windmills, his hay wains, his trees, these beautiful paintings that look nothing like straight lines and have more colors than the primary in black and white. And I started to, this is not in the show, this is in a private collection in Albuquerque, New Mexico? I don't know. New Mexico somewhere. And I was really starting to fall in love with this abstraction, this movement, the vibrancy of the color, the way it played. And it made me starting to think back. And I started to look again at Gerhard Richter. And I saw some of his newest work, where he's moving into, I don't even know what he calls them, but it's pretty much like squeegeed paint. And this wonderful coworker of mine, Gayla Lawrence, made us do this ridiculous workshop where, you're welcome, Gayla, where I had to, design something for a kid. And I was like, oh, man, I'm not doing this. I'm just gonna play. And I did. I played, and it reminded me of Richter's work, and I was all like, I need to do that. I need to do more of that. So all of a sudden, I'm an artist with two different directions. I got these landscapes that I'm really getting into, and then I'm playing, and so I start building up this paint and start layering this paint and pulling the paint with squeegees, plastics, pieces of paper, my hand, whatever I could, to build. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, oh, okay. And the artist Helen Frankenthaler, let me see if I have her, popped up in my head. And how she was just like, just let the paint be paint. A truest painting is honest about what it is. And a true painting is not a representation of what we see, but a series of colors and a medium on a surface, and we just let it be what it is. So I was going from this very rigid, very technical driven work to very conceptual work. And so I played around with it. And this is where I started to do the 5s, the 6s, and the 7s. Because in my old work, I have a love of pattern, a little bit OCD, a little bit obsessive. I would spend hours and hours and hours just drawing grids. And that's fine, it's good. It's also, yeah, it's a lot. So I started to do that. And I was drawn to these blobs. I don't know what you call them. And I hadn't done anything with them, but I liked the idea of them being non-entities. Some people want to think of them as amoebas. In my head, I think of them sometimes as disease. Sometimes I think of them as opposing forces. Some of them I just think as inspiration. It depends on my mood, really. And I started to think about numerology and how it's important in art and how it's important in religion. I was raised Catholic, so numbers are all over that faith. And a song lyric popped in my head by the Pixies, this band, late 80s, early 90s band. And on one of their more famous songs, he said, if man was 5, then the devil is 6, then God is 7. And it was a tongue-in-cheek song, but it got me thinking. And I was going in a different direction personally in my life. And that started to really just hit me. And the more I thought about it, the more and more it became a really important part of what I was doing, both as a person and as an artist. So I started to think about what the colors mean. And I started to think about how I can take the landscapes I was doing and these works that have kind of their own sense of landscape and space to them. And what I want to do with those artistically, if you're a businessman and you're selling 2 different products that are extremely divergent in the same shop, you're probably not going to make any money. If you're a baker who is also a used car dealer, you're going to fail. And that's kind of what I felt like. So I started to bring them together. And I started to think about some of the pathways that I was on, where I was heading. These are images of the Mixmaster, the new Margaret Hill Hunt Bridge, that I passed every day on my way to work. And I liked the intersection at certain vantage points that you would get from these massive lines. And I, as someone who has lived in Oak Cliff before Oak Cliff was popular, we called this the bridge to nowhere, because it took you from Loose Sterrett to West Dallas, and there was nothing there. And I was like, this is just a waste of money. Look at our inflated egos. And that hit me. And I started to think about that in terms of my own self and my own pathways, my own thoughts. And of course, I was proven wrong. That's a now vibrant section of Dallas, and it is a wonderful little footbridge. And it's really made that whole area enlivened. It's a lot safer to live there. And I started to run with that. And I started to look back at that Gerhard Richter work and how far could I push this idea of space, depth. What makes depth? What brings it out? What does it mean when I let the letters get overlapped by other things? What does it mean for me to bring them forward? What does it mean for, like in this work, where all of them are just overlapping in chaos? And how does that relate to my experiences in life? So I started to continue on with these works, and I started again looking further and further at J.M.W. Turner, who is a personal idol of mine. I love his work. His Hannibal Crossing the Alps is probably one of my favorites. It's often one of his more ignored, in my opinion. He gets favored for the slave ship and his nautical boat paintings, which are pretty. They're boats. But there's something about this image that was just so tremendously powerful for me. And as a skier, I've skied through an avalanche, and it scares the bejesus out of you. When all of a sudden you have snow up to your ankles, and then all of a sudden it's up to your waist, and all you can hear is and I've skied in whiteout conditions where you can't see the sky because it looks the same as the ground. You don't know what's up, down, left, right. And the only thing that got me home was those yellow flashing lights on the, what do they call those? The lifts, thank you. So I started to look at works, photographs that I'd taken, and started to play around with those brushworks, those brush strokes, that little bit of nothing that he would put in his work that just makes it so powerful. And I started to think about other works. I'm sorry, this is so bad. This is watercolor of the Houses of Parliament on Fire. And I stared at, not this one, but one of his other studies of it for probably an hour. And I stared at one little bit, like maybe that big. And it was people. And if you backed away for 20 feet, you'd be like, yeah, those are little people down there. And if you looked up close and really got into it, it was a blue brushstroke with a brown dot. And yet to my eye, that was a person. And I was mesmerized by that. And so when we zoom into his work, and again, I'm sorry this is so pixelated because, well, I don't have permission to use this work. And you look at his brushwork, it almost becomes like an abstract painting. And I look at other works, these beautiful, beautiful, kind of archaic, kind of almost Baroque pieces that he did that have that feel to them, even though it's during the Romantic period. And you zoom into the houses in the back, and I mean, it looks no longer like a Turner. This almost looks like a Whistler, or, you know, it's nothing. I mean, look at that. It's a flat blue brushstroke with a little bit of white and Prussian blue and a square of red with a dot of white on it, a white streak. He spent no time. He just went, and he just went like this with his brush to get that tip. Just press and then release, press and release to get that tip. And it's nothing. And he didn't think anything about it. But we look at it and we're like, oh my God, how did he do that? And I got so enamored about the power of the eye, the power of the mind, and how we perceive things, and how we overthink everything. And how it's just the letting go that allows us to create something truly beautiful and unique. So I looked at more and more of his works. I love this watercolor. It is a sloppy mess of stuff. And, you know, you have the boat here. You have the houses on fire here. And it's a study. And that's what watercolor was meant for. It was meant for you to go outside and go, oh, yes, oh, I need to capture. And then you go back in and you got a photograph in your mind. And you got the study here, and you're like, okay, now I can paint it the way it really looks. I go out and look at a boat and do some drawings while they're still, and I can plug in the details. It's like Photoshop before Photoshop. You know, it's just more complex. And we look at his works, like this one. I love this, the Grand Canal in Venice. And you zoom into this right here. It's nothing. It's a field of white with some vertical burnt umber lines. And how powerful that is. Like, what? Like, how did he let go so much to create something so beautiful? Oh, I did it again. So I started to look at my work. Like I just showed you, this is the original photograph I took. And this is the painting that I finished. Or painting. Well, they call pastels paintings. And so I was able to just, I was like, oh no, sorry. These are both photographs. Sorry, these are the photographs. This is the painting I showed you earlier. This is the pastel I showed you earlier. So sorry, I can't see it from an angle. You guys got a better view. So this is those photographs of this work and that work. And I needed to, in my head, get all of these little lines perfect. I needed to get all of these little creepy crawlies perfect. And I realized, no, I just need to let go. So if you look really close, you have all of this algae stuff here. And I was like, and I just went like this. And I don't even think I looked at it. I just kind of let the pastel just kind of do a circle. And I played with it and layered it. And I was just able to let it go. And eventually it became something that I was really in love with. I really found beauty in. So I continued to work. This is the photograph of the landscape that I just showed you. And as you can see, I really embellished the clouds. Why? Oh, where'd it go? Yeah, because I wanted to show the power of those clouds. I wanted to show how I felt at the time. All of the photographs I'm showing you were what was driving me. This power of nature. The audacity of man to think that they're anything. This idea of we are going to put our mark on history and that it will be left forever for anyone. And I'm like, no, you are an ant in a hill of ants. We have one purpose, and that is to live and die. And I had to get that into my head as an artist, that what I'm making is not anything except for what I want it to be. And it's just for me. And if it aids someone else, then fantastic. But it's not meant, I need to get away from this idea of I'm making something for the eons. I just need to make it. I did it again. So all of these are in, I think, except for this one, are in the gallery now, the paintings. And you can see the photographs, and if you look at the final works, you see what's the word I'm looking for? The embellishments I made to them. How I let certain colors just kind of bring out because I needed that primary color to show up. Because I needed that idea of these are the building blocks, the essences of what we deal with every day. This is where we get these elevated ideas of humanity. And it's nothing we've done. It's just a reflection of the Creator. So I started to play around. And I was really getting into this. And I was like, oh, look I'm doing this whole abstraction within painting, and I'm loving it, and this is great. And I felt like, and I'm not trying to be controversial here, but I brought one of my works to one of my coworkers, and I felt like Adolf Hitler when he was first interviewing for art school, and they just were like, no, go away. And he became a horrible person. I was creating Jacob van Roosdales in 2020, and no one wants to look at a Dutch Baroque painter in 2020. In the museums where they're like, oh yes, we have all agreed that this is history, this is beauty. I will admire it, yes. But I'm Jon Fontenot. I am a teacher in a high school. No one gives a rat's patootie. And one of my coworkers, I was like, what do you think about this? And she's like, well, it's beautiful. It's great. But, it's just a landscape. And I was just like, oh. It was like she took the dagger and put it in and then turned it. And I realized she was right. And what was I saying? What was I doing? I needed to bring the voices together. So I started to, again, push those ideas into each other, where I'm doing the landscapes, I'm bringing this idea of the sublime, I'm bringing this idea of choices. Are we acting on our own will? Are we acting on the will of ego, of temptation? Are we acting on the Creator's will of what they would have us all to be? And where does that lead us? And how does that look? How does that manifest itself? So I started to combine the works, as you see with this triptych here. And I was really into this. I've been hanging on to these photographs for probably 15 years. And I was like, one day, I'm gonna do something with these. And I started with this one, mainly just because I wanted to play around with pastel. I wanted to get these beautiful little textures and grittiness and distortions that look like grass, that look like asphalt, that look like all this, but really it's just me going, and I like this idea of the highway that just leads off to a single point, but it doesn't. It always turns, it always curves, it goes uphill, it goes down, it gets lost. And I looked at the other images I took before and after I took this shot. And I was taken over by the lack of anything, just the loneliness, the sense of isolation that we have. Now, as a cyclist, I'm often out riding by myself. I've been hit by cars by myself and, broken arms without anyone's help and had to somehow get to the ambulance and hospital. I know what it's like to get out 50 miles from nowhere and have to fend for oneself. And you always get cocksured when you come out of that going, yeah, I got through that. That's pretty cool. I can do anything now. And then there's always that one time where you're like, yeah, I'm in Stevensville. I know that's 3 hours away, but can you come pick me up? Because I couldn't move my leg. Because my ego had gotten a hold of me. And this work I love because you see the emptiness, you see the desolation, you see the nothing. And there's just this hint of road here and here, a hint of the road, the edge of the road right here. And I like this idea of well, I got here, but now what do I do? And it makes you realize your own ineffectuality. That by yourself, you're completely ineffectual. You are subject to all the rules that everything else goes through. I love watching, actually I don't really love watching, I love watching people watch them. These animal shows. And the little rabbit sticks his head out. And they got those beautiful, Peter, whatever his name is, narrator. He's always Peter Coyote. Yeah. He always, look at these. And, then a hawk comes and rips the freaking rabbit's head off and it's blood and gore. And you're like, oh my God. And I'm just like, no, that's life, dude. That's what it is. We get our creature comforts and we get lost in this idea of that we matter, that we are somehow special. And so I started doing these ideas of the bridges because they're man-made. They're pathways that we create. They're ideas that we are putting upon the world to take us someplace. And the number 7 for me is very much divine because for me, I look at the clouds. I look at this half break of a cloud, this ginormous cumulus cloud that then the wind has just tore through, or this mass, and it's just beauty upon beauty, and that's the divine. But at the same time, we are putting ourselves out there as if we are the creator, we are the architect. And we get so ahead of ourselves. That really, we just become one-dimensional. We're just a line drawing. The beef, the mush, the essence, that color that's just sucks you in. That's unexplainable. We can't create that. We can create the likeness of it, but we can't really create it. So I was really, I was enjoying that. But I wanted to get away from, I was like, to be quite honest, I got tired of painting clouds. I love clouds. They're beautiful. I get tired of painting them. And I've been sitting on, I love barns, old barns. I don't know why. I'm fascinated by them. Like, why didn't you tear that down? Why do you still leave that up? Are you just lazy, or is it some aesthetic thing? It's like these men with their old cars that they're going to one day fix in the middle of the field that you're like, you're never going to fix that. And it just looks trashy. But to some people, maybe it isn't trash. Maybe it's just beauty. And I find some beauty in that, but I also find some sadness in it. So which led me to this work. Now, this was, I don't know how I didn't get arrested, because I think someone lived here. But I was in, if you've seen cyclists, we wear spandex and funny hats, and shoes that you can't really walk in. Well, I'm climbing through this guy's house. The window's broken, so I'm assuming no one lives there, but someone was living there. And if you look through, the first image is from the outside, that window. And I've gotten myself, and I've crawled through the window to take a picture of it. And this is the inside, which we see a little bit of here, which then you can see the outside next window, which is the wood of this once boarded up window that's right next to it. And I was looking at these one day and I was like, oh my God, I got to do something with them. I love this. And again, I'm on this whole, like, understanding my place in the world. And as a teacher who's been through it a very long time, you start seeing cycles, you start seeing patterns, and you start seeing the grandchildren of your kids that were there when you first started. I started thinking about what some of our kids go through, and the secular nature of what they go through, what humanity goes through. And I immediately was just like, oh my God, I got to do something with these now. Because this is like, the view within a view within a view within a view that just keeps on going down the road. And it never gets better. It might get a little bit better. Look, they got a boarded up window now, but it's still crap inside. It's still horrific. It's still a sad beauty. And so this was, I was really starting to let go here. With watercolor, some watercolor artists, many watercolor artists, test the idea of using a masking fluid. So I just literally, instead of trying to paint in this perfect mask like you're supposed to, I just kind of flung it and just kind of let it hit where it would, and just did large brush strokes, just like Turner was doing with his towers and the Houses of Parliament. And I had no clue what it was going to look like, because I painted the whole painting and then rubbed off that little masking fluid, which is kind of like a rubber cement almost. And all of a sudden you have this beautiful painting with these flocks of white. And you're just like, oh my God, that's so horrific. I love it. And I just let it go. And I think I started to get into the process of it and allowing that to kind of mirror what I was going for with the work anyway. And I did work over them. Occasionally the white was a little too much, so I worked in it a little bit. Oh, that's it. So how am I doing on time? So that's a little bit about my work. So yeah, I don't have a great closer. I'm just going to stop talking.
That was wonderful. Anybody have any questions or comments? Please let me get the stick microphone to you so we can capture that on our recording. Anyone?
I had a question or a comment earlier.
Okay,
and
let me-
escaped me.
Oh, goodness.
Okay.
No, I can't recall.
So I'm really interested in the numerology because you referenced that 5 is man, 7's the devil. 6 is the devil, 7 is God. So you're referencing all of those entities in your work. Do you ever use multiple numbers? I'm trying to remember.
I
if
do.
you because I was
There are
thinking
some
I'd
works that
seen
have multiple numbers,
So what does that
especially in
mean
the
to you?
purely abstract ones. I'm sorry, let me let you finish your question.
No, I was going to say, so what were you thinking? What did that mean to you in the process if you had multiple numbers? It's easy to understand if you're just going, oh, this is humanity, or the 7's in the clouds, that's the creator, that's God. So when it's layered, explain what that means to you.
Well, like I said, I was dealing with this idea of space and depth, but for me, I wasn't talking about literal space, but spiritual space. So a buddy of mine, he's very much a religious person, and he talks about how we have morals, ethics that kind of guide us through society. And for him, there is a spiritual world and a spiritual moral that we just can't grasp onto, that we can't understand, we can't diffuse, we can't comprehend. But that if we're open to it, it appears to us in our actions, in our life, in small, almost invisible ways. And so when I do multiple numbers, it is often about this idea of me personally, what I'm going through, or what I'm seeing in humanity as a whole. I'll link colors to it. Color plays a large part in a lot of religions. We have this idea of hierarchy of color, depending on what faith you're talking about. For some, blue is all importance. For some, white. For some, red. For others, red is debase. Red is of the earth and low. I talk about this, and I think about this in my own work, but especially with my art history kids. We do a lot of artwork across religions or across faiths, across cultures. And some of them are very much born in Judeo-Christian faith, some of them are not. So we talk about the idea and the symbolism of the serpent. And in most Western cultures, the serpent is one of temptation. The serpent is one of poison, death. But for others, the serpent is one of abundance and one of protection, one of wisdom. And that's hard for my kids to get but what we have to explain to them is the serpent is closer to the ground. Therefore, the serpent is closer to creation, therefore closer to the creator. That the serpent works its way through crops and devours rodents and other things that would take our bounty away from us. So for some of the abstract works, I play around with my understanding of color, what it symbolizes, and where we place importance of color as man or as ego. I might have the 5s, where we have it as more of a collective ego, more of a unified temptation. I'll have a 6. And for that part that we just can't really understand or comprehend, that's where the 7s come in. And when I speak of the creator, a God, when I say 7 is God and 6 is the devil and 5 is man, that's just a song lyric. That's just where I got the idea. When you look at my work, I'm not saying that is Satan. Satan is here. No, for me, it's just that idea of a collective temptation, a collective thought, a collective movement. For the 5 is that individual ego, and I could going. So you think about Sigmund Freud's idea of mental and emotional development, the id, the ego, and the superego. And where does that play into divinity? Where does that play into spirituality? Or is that just rational collectivity? Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Of course, I've got to make some comments.
I love comments.
Well, my first comment is I can relate to what you started with in getting into a funk or hitting a brick wall and not knowing how to get out of that. I hit
Worse.
that about every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And my last funk, I got out of it because a friend of ours here at the Arts Center, a guy named Quentin, at our last Art Connection show exhibited this spectacular photograph of a storm. And there was about this much landscape and about this much storm. And God smacked, is that the word? It hit up the side of the head. And I finished it a month or so ago, still looking at it, but I turned it into a triptych, and it's like 36 by 60 now.
Oh,
and in the technique that I've used for years, I wad up paper and add paints and pastels and things to it, but it was just this enormous sky painting. And I'm now finishing a diptych. I'm doing this series that I call Triptychs, Diptychs, and Other Experiments. And
I like it.
the diptych I'm doing is based on a mountain called, I don't know how to put Torre de Paine or something like that in Patagonia. And this is my third version of it. And my way out of this particular funk was to go larger and big, large, and expand everything. It's kind of a challenge to go from 16 by 20 to 36 by 60 and, pull it all together still, keep it together and know how to sometimes even know how to control it. And my biggest problem with lots of paintings is to know when it's finished.
Right. I as a teacher, one of the biggest pitfalls that I know I have fallen into, and I know that others have too, is that we don't practice what we preach. We get above it. And I have this great slideshow that I didn't create. I just stole it because it's fantastic. By a teacher by the name of Nicole Briscoe. And she's got a quote from Ira Glass about one should never covet their ideas. And I tell my students this all the time. I had this great professor at Otis College of Art and Design in Foundations of Drawing 1. And he was a phenomenal artist. I mean, he was a great draftsman. And at the time, we had this 3-tiered scaffold of taxidermied animals from the Natural History Museum there in LA. And I'd been working probably 3 days on an oil pastel rendering of this ibex or something, I don't even know. And Professor White goes, and at Otis, it's a very unfair grading system that's based in real world, which is why it's unfair. You have a class of 23 and the professor comes out and he's all like, and this literally happened to me in figure drawing. The professor comes out and he's all like, there's 23 of you, 3 of you will get A's. The rest of you will get a grade based on how well you draw compared to those A's. Well, in my section, I had this kid from Brazil who was a freaking walking Michelangelo. He was there on a full ride. How am I ever going to capture that guy? And he grabbed my drawing, Professor White did, and he said, can I see that? I was like, oh, yes, please. Give me that A. I want that A. I'd never not gotten an A in art. And here I am getting B's. I was mortified. And he's like, this is fantastic. Do you mind if I show you something? And I went, yeah. Because I want that grade. And he took my drawing and he went, and then he put it back together and tore it again. And he continued to tear it up until there were like pieces of paper that big. And this is an 18 by 24 drawing. And he gave me the scraps. And he said, put it back together and make something beautiful and amazing. And I went, I'm going to kill you. I'm not going to make something amazing. I'm going to kill you. But I had forgotten that. I tell my kids all the time, don't covet your ideas. And I tell them that because they come up with one idea and they think that's amazing and they forget compositionally what they could do with it. But I forgot that I just need to do that, period. So I have a work that my kids are like, it's been hanging on my wall for 2 years now. And it's a bunch of scrap paper that I sit through a sewing machine and sewed it together and painted on it. And I looked at it, I was like, that sucks. And my kids are like, that's amazing, I love it. Why don't you finish it? I was like, because it sucks. But I keep it up there because you don't know. Don't covet your ideas. Sometimes it flips on you and you get something amazing. But yeah, coming out of a rut is the absolute worst.
But it's the best when you make it, when you get out of the rut and you get the energy back again. And
It's like
by the way,
breathing.
I'm going to steal that idea about tearing up a painting and use it in the teen studios sometime. And it would be great to see. We do a studio for teens every second Sunday here, and that would be a great idea for some of them to shock them and then see how they put it back together, because we really get some pretty creative kids in there.
And we do have sewing machines.
Yes.
Oh,
Just don't tell them what you're going to do. Just tell them it's
no.
going to be
Well,
something
it'd be the
amazing.
idea with, take the best one and tear it up and
Yeah.
hope the kid doesn't shoot you.
Yeah, pretty much. But the
You made a
big
couple other
teenagers-
comments that were interesting to me. I'm the kind of guy that goes to the Kimball and they have to tell me to get away from the
Yeah,
painting because
every
I
time.
want to see how he painted it. And that
Every
gets
time.
back to some of the things you were saying about, Turner and how he painted it. And if you look at his paintings close up, they are pure abstraction.
Yeah.
And it's not
Yeah.
until you step back from them that everything comes together. And you mentioned Helen Frankenthaler. She's a hero of mine, and the idea that she just let things go. And I'm lucky if in one painting there are areas where I just let things go.
Yeah, and you have to. I really believe you have to. You have to let the
Yeah.
paint
You-
be what it is.
Well, I was raised on the idea of happy accident, and I don't know
Yeah.
if that's the quite right phrase or not, but and it's important to know when they happen and to recognize them.
Yeah,
And I think I'm through.
every time someone says happy accidents, I always think of Bob Ross and Happy Trees.
Oh,
And the thing is with Bob Ross's trees, they all look exactly the same. But that's the other thing is, what the hell does a tree look like? No tree looks the same. My kids are like, well, how do I paint a tree? I was like, I don't know. Draw some lines and then throw some paint at it. And then hopefully it looks like a tree. But God only knows.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's constantly in movement. There's so much space and depth in a tree. How could you possibly render it without just letting it go? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I was listening to you, and it seems like you've been evolving into different periods and different types of art. And the clouds, you kind of got into a funk and you got stuck. Where are you now as far as your evolution?
Well, I'm working on another landscape. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with it, but it's still in the same. It's within this kind of attitude. I meant to finish this PowerPoint and add about 5 more slides to it. I forgot. And then the kids left yesterday. I was like, oh, AP exams. Oh my God. Life. And I totally forgot. But there in the gallery, there's the larger work that's just a sky. I think I called it a skyscrape. And it's got some scaffolding on it. And so I'm still in that idea of what can I get away with? Literally, that's what can I get away with? Can I make something that isn't anything and make it look pretty? That makes you stop and go, huh? And that's kind of where I'm at. The image I'm talking about, the red sky with the scaffolding. The red sky was taken out of a plane window somewhere over New York City. And then the scaffolding's in the meatpacking district next to the Whitney. And it was this beautiful bit of scaffolding that I was like, where does that go? And I didn't even know if I was supposed to be on it, but I found out, which led to a great little adventure. They have this elevated walkway through Lower Manhattan that's just gorgeous. I didn't know I still don't know if I was supposed to be on that scaffolding. I don't care. I didn't get arrested. Yeah, it's the important part. But I got pictures of it, and for me, that's so. Right now, I'm working on a landscape. It's nothing right now. It's nothing. It's color on paper, but I haven't been able to touch it in a month because life. But I'm still heading in this direction. I want to continue to push um, the abstraction, the landscape, how, like what Picasso, if you've ever looked at Picasso's sketches of, sketchbooks of the bull, he's got this beautiful progression of drawings of bulls. And he just continues to take away and take away and take away, just like Mondrian did, till it's just line. And it doesn't even look like a bull. It looks like a circle with two lines coming out and some male genitalia, or masculine bull genitalia, and it looks like nothing. It doesn't look like a bull at all. But how far can I push this? How far can I still get it to have that sense of sublime wonder, that idea of the impossible, that idea of power, and still have it be personable at a human level?
Thank you.
So you're talking about evolving and drawings, et cetera. And as an instructor, I wonder if you could speak to, what got me thinking about that is my great nephew. When he was 10 and a half, 11 years old, he could draw faces. I mean, human beings, just anything. And it was so sublime, it took your breath away. And then as I talked to my niece over the years, she says, well, he doesn't have it anymore. So can that be reignited? I mean, it was just sublime, amazing for a 10 and a half year old.
Yeah, I completely believe that it can be reignited. And like the idea of my artwork about pathways, influences, I see it with my own students all the time. I browbeat them a lot. I push them to the point where I need them to go, because a lot of our kids take art because it's fun and they enjoy it. But I'm teaching it because I'm expecting you to major it in college and become a professional artist, because that's how I should be teaching it. And I've had kids come up to me and be like, I'm just burnt out. We've created so much art, I just don't want to create anymore. And then I had one of them show up to the opening, and he's a former Marine. He's a tattoo artist, as well as whatever the hell else he does. I don't even know. But he is and he follows me on Facebook and Instagram, and he's constantly posting drawings that he's done. This burnt out artist, 10 years later, is now just doing it for a living. And especially young at age. God bless. Someone can say the wrong thing. I had a work that I was extremely proud of in high school. I had gotten some award at Tarrant County Art School thing. I don't even know. And it was on display in the library, and some other guy in my class had gone into the library, and it was a big piece on like foam core, and kicked it in half and crumpled it up, and we found it in the trash can. And that was just horrible. But the guy was, I'm trying not to curse. The guy, it's been so hard not to curse up here. Because I'm used to I'm like adults, I can use grown-up language. No, you can't. The guy was a jackanape. He was an idiot. But I had this when I was a sophomore in high school. You look at the seniors and their work, and you're like, oh my God, wow. And I remember this one girl, I had the biggest crush on her, and she was so gothic and so dark and so, she liked Bauhaus. Oh my God. And she thought I was the biggest namby-pamby, weirdo, piece of crap ever. And she was like, "You suck." And I remember looking back, because I was on the art and literary committee, and I remember looking back at our old magazines that my high school did and looking at her artwork going, "Okay, I sucked. You suck, lady. That was just crap. I would have given you a C in my class." And, but yes, can it be reignited? Yes, but there's a lot that can beat it out of you. There's a lot. There's a lot of art teachers I know that no longer produce art because they do it for a living, and it's just beaten out of them.
I think my niece's idea was that it needed to be developed or else you would lose it. Is that a fact? I
No.
didn't think it was.
The thing is, anyone can learn to draw. Anyone can learn to draw. Now, can you do it well? Well, that's something that you have to cultivate. But I have kids that they do amazingly mediocre work in my class, but technically it's really quite good. Conceptually, it's meh. But they go on to do amazing things in graphic design. They do amazing things in architecture. It's just their vehicle, their inspiration. I'm giving them prompts and ideas that they have to do work on that they just find uninspiring. Sometimes the world gives you that. Sometimes the world gives you inspiration. And if you can develop your technical ability, and on top of that, you look around with fresh eyes, like just baby eyes, then that's where you get the talent. At least in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much, Jon. That was a wonderful presentation. Wonderful to hear you talk about your work. Thanks for taking the time
You're
to
quite
be with
welcome.
us.
Thank you for having me.
All right.